Hello and welcome to the Sky Blue Times YouTube channel. Today I wanted to give my thoughts on Manchester City so far this season, things that we've seen in terms of players that have stood out, roles they've used, tactics, the kind of underlying numbers of a few different players in the team, different situations that have gone on around the league, fixtures coming up, just thoughts around a wide range of topics around Manchester City this season. Now, it's worth bearing in mind that City are only 3 points off the top of the Premier League, with Arsenal being the leaders there. I think it's very important just to bear in mind this early part of the season, not only the kind of thing that the players and Guardiola continue to kind of hammer home, which is really you just want to be within 5 to 10 points, be within the mix for the Premier League title race by the time that you do get to that kind of January, February time, the start of the new year. To ideally, if you're within 5-6 points, something like that would be more than plausible for you to go on and win the Premier League title if you go across all the seasons that City have won it. For most of them, that has been the case. There's been a few where they've been further back. There's been sometimes where they've been leading, but for the most part, as long as you're within that kind of range of the top, then it's perfectly fine. Beyond that, you're just looking to get out your Champions League groups, progress as far as you can within the cup games. And that is what you're looking for. So for City to be only 3 points off the top of Arsenal, to have lost those 2 games in Spurs and Brighton, but still be quite close to be 5th place, not far off a Champions League spot as well. And then to look at some of the fixtures that we'll do at the end of this video, that will come up when you think about Everton, Aston Villa, Bournemouth, Liverpool. We've got a real opportunity there to not only climb up the table, but to also kind of push yourself by the time we get to that November international break to a stage where across the league people are starting to think perhaps you're within that title race and within the group to just continue to build good momentum, good results, and feeling energy around the team as they head towards that December period, which is normally quite tough with how the schedule really does tighten up, playing at games every 3 days. So I think that's very important to bear in mind. I think to know that City are 6 points up compared to the fixtures of last season. So if we take the exact same fixtures home away against a certain opposition, City are +6 when you think about winning against Brentford, winning against Man United, getting a draw against Arsenal. They're points up on results that they didn't get last season. I think only Spurs, which are +7, and then Bournemouth +9, are higher than City within this metric. So that's certainly a positive one, given that they had those 2 losses against Brighton and Spurs, which would have increased it even further. The underlying numbers have increased across those games. The goal difference has increased across those games as well. So I think for a team that we all quite clearly can see is not at its very best, that has players to bed in, that has players that need to improve, the team needs to improve. To know all of that, yet we're still seeing plenty of underlying numbers that are positive, that are moving in the right direction, and the team is by no means far off the top of the Premier League. So I think from that angle, I think it's fair to say there are encouraging signs. And throughout the video, we'll talk through a few things that they do need to improve, and that's the thing we have to be honest about. They do need to make improvements in the build-up, not turning over the ball as much. They do need to improve the pressing structure, for example. There's definitely areas to improve. You've got players that come back. You think about the injuries the team has had to deal with. So you've got Marmoush that had that on the October international break with his knee injury. So he's expected to be back after this next run of games. You expect him to be back, Kusanov to be back, Shirky to be back, Aït-Nouri to be back. All of these players will add to the bench a real kind of quality in depth. You've got Kovacic, who just played I think 69 minutes for Croatia in the last game for them during this international break. So he's now got minutes in his leg, back from his injury, another option off the bench, perfectly kind of suited to bringing on a midfielder for those 20-30 final minutes of a game to help see it out when need be, as well as the kind of rotation option within the cup games and so on. Very useful to have him back. So to deal with those kind of injury issues, a team that really is finding its feet. You've got players like Tijani Reinders that need to settle into the Premier League, let alone to City itself. I think certainly moving in a good direction. You think about some of the things leading up to the season as well, when we're talking about the number of outgoings that needed to happen, big kind of voices, big experienced players going, and then you bring in somebody like Donnarumma that we've seen already has had a big impact on the team with his leadership, the way he communicates with that back line, always so vocal. And then even, I remember that interview of Bernardo and Rodri they had a little bit earlier this season, where they felt internally, those two players themselves, that the opposition needed to put it right in the very corner to beat Donnarumma. So that's another factor, the kind of psychological impact on other players that they'll be playing against, as well as the team, the defence in front of him, the confidence that they'll have, knowing that they'll have him behind. Brings a lot of experience that we lost in De Bruyne, Kyle Walker, even Akanji over the years, Edison, etc. So many experienced players that have moved on, so he helps to fill some of that void. So I think that's really been important, as well as moving on players like De Bruyne, like Akanji, etc., where you're clearing space for minutes for the younger players to come through, so that the likes of Kusanov will now get even more minutes playing as a defender. Obviously, Donnarumma then fully steps into that role with Edison moving on, but you think about Phil Foden needing to play centrally. Cherki wants back from injury to play centrally. That doesn't happen if you've got Kevin De Bruyne there, 33, 34 plus years old, demanding to play 2,000, 3,000 minutes, and that's exactly where Guardiola would have played him. So that's been really important in the summer from Viana to kind of churn the team into a place where these younger players and the kind of players that you would say are kind of not just about to enter their prime and needed to step into those roles like Phil Foden. You've cleared the path for those guys to move forward. So I think that's really, really good heading into the season, and hopefully we'll see the benefit of that further down the line once they fully kind of take over from those roles. So yeah, I think there's been, as I mentioned throughout the video, lots of encouraging signs, improvements still to come, team that's moving in the right direction, and that's the main thing, that they are building momentum and going game to game. You're seeing perhaps not an improvement from each game in terms of the performances just getting better from one game to the next, but there is an aspect of the team that is improving within each of those games. So even if Brentford that first half was really good in my opinion, but we didn't sustain it, and we've not sustained it in previous games. But then when you look at the way the team defended in that second half compared to how they were defending against Manchester United when they didn't have much of the ball, against Arsenal when they didn't have much of the ball, then compared to how they were defending against Brentford, who really had a handful of chances off throw in set pieces, but besides that really did struggle to create genuine chances and get the ball into dangerous positions inside the penalty box. There's improvements coming across those different games that you can definitely pick out. If you look at the Premier League this season for open play expected goals, Manchester City 1.73 are number one in the Premier League. They had the third lowest expected goals against, 0.9. So when you're looking at some of those underlying numbers over the first few games, small sample size, I know, but that's definitely a positive, despite the fact, as I've mentioned throughout the video, we all know watching this is not the best version of Manchester City, not the best version this kind of rebuild will get to, and not the best version this team will get to this season. But there's lots of encouraging underlying numbers, there's lots of encouraging signs in the performances. And so when you remember all the injuries, when you when you talk about the kind of difficulty of setting these players in, it's definitely heading in a good direction. The average age of the team, I think that was an important thing for a lot of people heading into the team, to see that kind of churn. And that's not only Viana, we're moving on the older players like De Bruyne, like Edison, Akanji, etc., but then also on Guardiola with his selection to integrate those players. The average age of the top 10 minutes from last season in the Premier League was 26.7. The top 10 minutes from this season, the average age is 25. So you've already seen that drop quite significantly to around the age that you'd want to see the team kind of average at. We just move over to this here with the minutes. So this is the top 15 ranked players for most minutes played last season versus this season, all competitions. And as you can see, most of the top 15, particularly the guys playing some of the most minutes up here, are all well over 28 years old. Versus if you're looking at Manchester City this season, which is in the blue, you will see John Stones over on this side. You've got Rodri, who you'd expect to play a lot of minutes and will only move up this ranking system as he continues to get back from injury. Another thing City have had to manage over the opening few games. Matheus Nunes, you'd expect to move down the lineup in terms of minutes. As somebody like Kusanov moves up, he's outside the top 15 at the moment, but back from injury, I expect him to move up that list. So then he would be moving out. But then you look at these players: Oscar Bob, Nico Gonzalez, Josko Vardiol, Jeremy Doku, Donnarumma, Foden, O'Reilly. These players are all playing a lot of minutes and are all all at good ages. Only down the top end you've got Bernardo Silva, but his role has been reduced compared to last season. I think he started 4 out of 7 Premier League matches versus last season you would have expected him to start all of those. So even the Asian player Silva that you think is going to probably depart by the time we get to next summer, at least that's what his comments do allude to, he's starting to move down the order. And when you're looking at your top 5 to be Tijani Reinders 27, Ruben Diaz 28, Haaland 25, Foden 25, Nico O'Reilly who is 20, and then you've got but yeah, that would be your top 5. Sorry, that's in a much better place compared to what it used to be. You've got players like Gundogan moved on, Akanji moved on, Edison moved on, De Bruyne moved on, Ortega is eventually going to be moved on, and then Mateo Kovacic, similar to Bernardo, would have stepped back in terms of his role this season. A player that's going to help more in rotation off the bench than he was being a starter for a lot of games. That role's now been taken by Rodri, by Nico Gonzalez. So the team is definitely churned in the right direction, at least from what we've seen from these opening few games. And hopefully, once we look at this, by the time we get to November, by the time we get to December, we're going to see a couple of players, like I mentioned, with Kusanov moving up. And there's some other younger players that we expect will play a lot of minutes, Marmoush, Cherki, etc., that will slowly make their way up the minutes rank and continue to bring more players down in this group. We just move over. This is the most shot involvements. So in a shot ending sequence, what part did these players play? Erling Haaland, Tijani Reinders, Phil Foden, Jeremy Doku, Oscar Bob, your top 5 for the most shot involvements in those. If we do per 90, then Phil Foden 6.42, Erling Haaland 5.05, and Tijani Reinders 4.97 are your top 3. I have also got it broken down in this graphic by the type. So you've got the person taking a shot, Erling Haaland, Tijani Reinders. No surprise, Reinders has definitely helped the team in that aspect. Losing somebody like Cherki, losing somebody like Marmoush that would take a lot of shots to be able to fill that void. And it's encouraging for a player that's not at his very best in Reinders to be so involved in shot ending sequences for the team. This is across the Premier League and the Champions League. And then Oscar Bob has just moved into this top 5 following the Brentford game where he was quite involved in that one. And you think about Marmoush, Cherki, Savinho, these are players that you expect to be pushing for a place within that top 5. So when you're looking around the team for the number of players that can be creative, that can take shots, can be involved in the build-up to shots, there's a lot of players around the team that can contribute. If you think about Aït-Nouri, Nico O'Reilly, Josko Vardiol, you've got defenders as well that can have some involvements. These guys won't be, at least per 90, won't be kind of putting up the numbers that Haaland, Reinders, Foden, etc. But if I remember correctly, last season Josko Vardiol was one of our highest, and he was playing mostly as a left back in that season. So to have more defenders actually contributing in being able to create chances is definitely another encouraging sign as we head into the rest of this season. I'll just move over to this one here. So this is Erling Haaland's table. Actually, before I get to this, if I just go back to shot sequences, what I wanted to mention was come back from the international break, we'll definitely want to see more players score more goals. So when I mention about Tijani Reinders here having these kind of number of shot involvements, Foden, Doku, Bob, you want to see these guys start to contribute more goals, and that will definitely come with them just having more volume of shots, more volume of games. But even though, and we'll get onto Erling Haaland, as impressive as he has been, he is an outlier, and that's an important thing to remember when you're kind of making that claim that City are only an Erling Haaland team. He's just that much of an outlier, that beyond everybody else, that it's very hard to kind of judge that fairly. But when we do get from the international break, when we get back, you do want to see Phil Foden, Tijani Reinders contribute more goals. I think Phil Foden has 2 goals across all competitions. No other player has 2 goals or more other than him and Haaland. I think there's about 5 players that have 1 goal across all competitions. So when you're looking at Jeremy Doku, Oscar Bob, Savinho, etc., Reinders, you need those guys to start to chip in with more goals. Reinders absolutely across all of their opening games has at least one time where he could have scored a goal, at least one time he could have provided an assist. Needs to start being decisive in those moments and getting the goals, getting the assists. And hopefully that will come towards the November and December period. So yeah, that's definitely something to keep an eye on. I think Foden, Reinders, Doku have all provided 4 goals and assists across all comps. So that's definitely a good start from those guys. You do want to see all of them start to chip in and get towards that kind of 15, 20 sort of mark for goals and assists. And I think all of those guys are capable. I think Bob, Shirky, Marmoush, all players that can definitely get lots of goals and assists. But that's one of the things we want to see that improvement on those next run of games. We want to see these guys provide more goals. So we're not just looking at Erling Haaland as the main kind of focal point. Now, if we move to that guy who has been outstanding in these opening few games, arguably the best player in the world at this present moment. This is just some of his underlying numbers, just to kind of show you just how impressive they have been. Only 8.5 total 90, so that's something to bear in mind throughout the video with these stats, is that it's such a small sample size. But this doesn't include his goals for the national team of Norway. So that's more games. So really, you're talking about a guy that's probably played. We're talking what, like 12, yeah, probably about 12 games now this season, and he's been phenomenal across near enough, if not all of those games. So yeah, if we look at here, goals per 90, 1.41. These are all his seasons at Manchester City, by the way. So best there, and I've highlighted in blue all of the kind of career best at City per 90 numbers. Shots 4.35, 2.12 shots on target per 90, non-penalty XG 1.07, non-penalty XG per shot 0.25. So you think about the value of every single shot he's taken. He's getting a very good chance every single shot. At least that's what he's averaging. Not quite the highest for shots on target percentage with 48.6. Goal per shot 0.32. So he really is being efficient compared to previous seasons. And then one of the more interesting ones is that distance in yards. The average from the goal that he's taken with going down to 10.5. So he's getting more and more shots, at least in these opening few games, closer to the goal, in better positions. And if I just move over to this here, this is a shot map from the Premier League. So as you can see, a lot of shots are taking place very close to the goal, very much in the middle of the goal. If you look at Europe's top 5 leagues this season, so Haaland has scored the most non-penalty goals with 9. Harry Kane and Mbappe have 7 each behind him. He leads for non-penalty XG, so 7.71. And second place, Mbappe has 5. So that is, when we're looking across Europe, significant way ahead of anybody else. So when we're trying to unpick this kind of argument of being the Erling Haaland team, it's important to remember just how far ahead he is of everybody else within Europe, let alone in the Premier League. And then when we do shift to the Premier League, so Erling Haaland 7.71 for non-penalty XG, 9 non-penalty goals. The nearest player in terms of non-penalty XG is Mateta at Crystal Palace with 3.29. He has 1 non-penalty goal. I think he has a penalty as well. So that's 2 goals across all comps, across the Premier League, sorry. Third place, Enzo Fernandez, 2.96 non-penalty XG with 2 non-penalty goals. So when you're looking at the number of quality chances Erling Haaland is getting within the Premier League, he is miles in front of everybody else. And there are players with less non-penalty XG, like Semenyo, who has, I think, 5 goals in the Premier League this season. So he's somebody that is racking up goals this season. There are other players in the Premier League that are scoring more goals than those 2 players in Mateta and Fernandez. But if we're talking about non-penalty XG, the quality of a number of chances that Erling Haaland getting is just far and above everybody else. So that's definitely an encouraging sign to know that the team that many people have felt, particularly as a City fan over many seasons, that the team can get better at finding Erling Haaland and creating more chances for him. Well, this season they absolutely are doing that. Now, another player I wanted to mention, I think it's been really important and not quite got his flowers, is Nico Gonzalez. So he is, I think, slightly played a little bit more than Rodri. He's around like 50 to 55% of minutes, and Rodri's around 45% of total minutes played this season, as they're sharing that 6, and Rodri's working his way back to full fitness. This is a brilliant graphic by Ishdeep, which his handle is there linked below. Definitely worth checking out to get more graphics like this from him on his account. So this is top 12 players by defensive actions in the middle third in the Premier League this season. Nico Gonzalez hasn't played anywhere near as much minutes as the rest of the players in this graphic, yet he's still in the top 12 with 16 defensive actions within that middle third. Somebody that I think is improving quite quickly in terms of on the ball, being able to turn quickly and play those progressive passes, break lines, as Guardiola has mentioned he needs to do more of. But off the ball, he's been very stable for the team, and that stability they lacked last season when Rodri was out of the team. So to be able to ease Rodri back in, not be completely dependent on him needing to be fit for the team to function, that Nico Gonzalez can come in and provide that stability, I think has been really important for the team across several different games. For Rodri to be able to go off after 60 minutes to pick up an injury against Brentford, and we're all fine with that because we know we've got Nico Gonzalez to come in, I think is going to help out the team tremendously, and he is, in my opinion, the long-term successor to Rodri for this team. I know people have their different doubts, but I'm pretty confident in everything that I've seen on and off the ball that he's going to be that guy, and the focus the following summer will be about replacing Bernardo Silva, bringing in a new number 8, looking at players like Adam Wharton, Elliot Anderson as players that could come in and fulfil that role. Within the Manchester City team this season, I think he's won the most tackles across all competitions. He's got the second most aerial duels won. So yeah, whatever kind of metric you want to look at, defensively, he's made a big impact on the team this season and will certainly go a long way to helping the team sustain those kind of levels across the full season as they look to try and be in the title race, and by the time we get to that kind of April-May period, especially with how much the kind of fixtures are kind of congested and building up. This is another area when we were talking about where City need to improve before Donnarumma arrived. After Donnarumma has come into the team and had a good run, this is the percentage of turnovers by the zone on a pitch. So as you can see with Manchester City with 23% in the defensive third, that needs to come down. You look at Arsenal with 13% in the defensive third. You look at Liverpool with 9% in that defensive third. For City, that needs to come down, that percentage. They want to be not losing the ball as much in their defensive third. I think only Aston Villa have been dispossessed more times than Manchester City in the Premier League this season. I think they've been dispossessed 78 times, City 77, and so City are second in Premier League for how many times they've been dispossessed. That number needs to come down. They don't need to be top of the Premier League for that metric. And then where those turnovers are happening, need to be higher at the pitch. You can't be losing the ball in your defensive third and expect to get away with it consistently across the Premier League season. Which also brings me to the build-up. That's an area that needs to improve when you're looking at City. It's man-to-man press, particularly the Spurs game and then Brentford in the second half. They weren't able to build up as well when they were dealing with that kind of press. You saw little bits of that in the Arsenal game, but primarily it's man-to-man press, Spurs game, Brentford game, where you saw that City were struggling. And this is before Donnarumma as well as after Donnarumma. I wouldn't tie this specifically to him. I think he's definitely going to play a part because he's not as good with the ball at his feet compared to Ederson. So that will definitely be a factor. But regardless of whoever was in the goal, whether it was Trafford or Donnarumma, when it comes to building up, particularly against man-to-man press, the team needs to improve. The kind of movement to drag opposition players around to open up space is not there. the consistency in the wide players, in Erling Haaland, Phil Foden, etc., to be outlets for the team to play into is not quite there. And they definitely need to make improvements on that. When you're looking at games like Aston Villa away coming up, Liverpool at home, Bournemouth at home, these are teams that will likely press man-to-man, that will be difficult to build up and play through. So Manchester City need to improve in these games. On the flip side, when it comes to pressing, I think we've seen City kind of ease Rodri back in, make him have a kind of zonal role in the middle, so this workload wasn't so high. And then in the last couple of games, we've seen him change that, and Rodri's more involved in the press, as well as Nico Gonzalez high up the pitch. And we're starting to see them to kind of plug those gaps. Initially, they were using their fullbacks quite a lot and having to cover a lot of grounds. And I think the kind of principle wanted to stop their kind of long balls and counter-attacks at source and force the opposition to play long into the areas where City are strong with the back line, the centre-backs. The number 6 able to win those balls. That makes sense. But then the actual structure being easy to play through, if you're able to pull City to one side, then switch it quickly back to the other. The adjustments from the midfielders when they're having to move across to cover gaps and cover players, there's definitely improvements to be made. You look at the game against Arsenal, they just weren't able to press Arsenal to win the ball back. So when you're looking at Declan Rice dropping really, really deep and pulling over to one side, so then Bernardo Silva gets stretched, and then you can open up space in the middle to be able to play through the City press. That's what I'm talking about. When we're thinking about areas the team needs to improve. So building up, particularly against man-to-man press, and then pressing the teams at the top end of the table. We'll find out against Bournemouth, against Aston Villa, against Liverpool. These teams City will try and press, and they must do a better job this season. On the flip side, when we're looking at high turnovers, I think City are third in the Premier League for the most high turnovers, and I think they're third for the most high turnovers, third for the most turnovers leading to a shot, but they're yet to score from a high turnover. So an improvement from last season to convert more of those high turnovers into a shot. That kind of idea of playing the ball a little bit more quickly into the forward players, but then taking those chances when they came. City haven't done that yet this season in the Premier League, so that's something to try and improve. I think players like Cherki, players like Marmoush coming back will definitely improve that. Those kind of players, the quality they have on the ball to be able to finish high up the pitch in the final third, those players will definitely make an impact and help in that regard. Something that they definitely need to take advantage of. You're not always going to be able to score from open play. City needs to be able to press well and recover the ball and use those kind of opportunities to score as well. That's definitely another thing. Corners, this again from Ishdeep, if you're not following him, his handle is down below. This is corners for Manchester City in the Premier League. As you see, targeting specific zone on the right hand side, on the left hand side, not so specific with the zone that they are targeting. When I was looking at the numbers, so City are, I'll just pull this up for you. So City are one of the only two teams in the Premier League this season, including Everton, that have not scored a goal. That have not conceded a goal from set piece. So from the defensive side of things, that's definitely an encouraging sign. Although we're only 7 games into the Premier League season, but then when we're looking at scoring from a set piece, City have taken the second fewest shots from a set piece, have the third lowest XG accumulated, and are the only team in the Premier League yet to score a goal from a set piece. So when we're looking at particularly corners, taking advantage of those situations, that needs to improve from the team when we get back from the international break. Players like Phil Foden, Omar Marmoush, Ryan Cherki, these are all players excellent at delivering the ball from corners, from dead ball situations. City do have the quality of takers there, but I think the volume definitely needs to increase, and in terms of targeting zones more consistently, that's where they need to improve. If you look at the volume, I think Arsenal have had nearly double the number of corners as City this season in the Premier League, so it's just kind of inescapable there that you need a number of corners to be able to create more and more chances. These are not situations you're going to score loads and loads of goals from, so you need the volume of corners, But then when we're looking at quality of corner taker, it's there. Consistency of the delivery and the actual person taking it, perhaps not. So yeah, that's something to keep an eye on when City return from the international break. These are the upcoming fixtures. Just before we get to those fixtures, a couple of things I wanted to mention was fast breaks. That's something to keep an eye on. So City last season, only Leicester City conceded a high number of XG via fast breaks. Essentially is a counter-attack. They had 8.2 XG conceded. City was 8.1. So up there with teams that got relegated in terms of conceding counter-attack goals, quality chances, from fast breaks. Compare that to Arsenal and Liverpool. They conceded 3.9 XG via fast breaks. So that is quite a lot more than double. You look at City over the recent years since the 18-19 season, the most they conceded was 3.6 during the 23-24 season, and then it jumped last season to 8.1. So when you're looking at that per 90, that's 0.212 XG. That's a very good chance on a fast break for the opposition every single game. So when you're a team like Nottingham Forest, you're a team like Everton, if you sit back, defend really, really well, last season you were going to get a very good chance to score against City if you were able to do your job and defend, and that's more than enough to get a win like Forest did when City went to play them at their ground with that 1-0 win. So then when you look at City this season, they have conceded 0.87 XG via fast break. Per 90, that's 0.124. But the majority of that is made up by Igor Thiago's chance in the last match against Brentford, 0.46. And then the second highest chance was from Odegaard against Spurs in the home match, second match of the season, 0.17. So, when you're looking at the quality of chances conceded per 90, it would be much lower without that Thiago chance. And once we get into more games, then that should ideally come down more and more and continue to look even more favourable, even though it's close to being half of what we were last season. So then that puts them in a good position. And then against Arsenal, United, Wolves, no fast breaks leading to a shot we conceded in those games as well. So at least from that metric, which caused City a lot of problems last season, it's moving in a good direction. I wanted to mention a few other players. Nico O'Reilly, deserved call-up for England, 4th most minutes played for City this season, leads the team for tackles and interceptions, has tackled the most dribblers, and is second for carries into the final third. Tremendous job kind of getting himself into the team after Aït-Nouri got injured and laying down his spot in the team as a left-back, signing a new contract, great to see. And the best kind of compliment I could pay is that I think Aït-Nouri will have a very tough time getting back into the City team with the form of Nico O'Reilly. Does ever so well dealing with transitions, being able to stiff out when teams are about to break and recover the ball high at the pitch. That relationship with Jeremy Doku, holding the width, when to come inside. He will drag players inside with his runs. He'll make those kind of underlapping runs for Doku into the half space, into the box. It's just good stuff all the way around, and he's only going to improve in terms of his duels. I think aerial duels, ground duels, kind of dominating those situations. He can do a lot better for somebody of his size, of his frame, and that's something that will definitely come with time. But when you're looking at him dealing with players like Madueke and making it look really quite comfortable, it's very impressive for somebody that is only 20 years old, and definitely good to see another academy player come through that has a genuine opportunity to be a starter week in, week out for this City team. So yeah, really good stuff. And then on the flip side, Jeremy Doku, who he has that relationship with, moving more inside as well as holding the width. Sharper kind of angles when he's having his 1v1s, particularly against Burnley. He's really looking to cut inside early, making use of pulling players apart and then the space in the box to be able to play those passes into Erling Haaland like he did for that assist for Haaland, the goal against Burnley. Lots of really good stuff. You think about the United game, smart he is to kind of find that space between the lines and occupy that space, not get drawn towards the ball. When I was looking at his numbers in the Premier League, so he's third for assists with 3. third most carries into the penalty area with 19, and third most successful take-ons, and then he's second in the Premier League for progressive carries with 44. To me, this looks like Jeremy Doku has gone up a level. This is similar to Erling Haaland, the level he's going to be at for the rest of the season, and that comes from the relationships with the players on the pitch, the team being more stable, the change in role in terms of getting more freedom to come inside in the final third, as well as dropping deep and using his strength, his hold-up play when the team is looking to build out from the back as well. And then also his decision-making. I think he's just been more decisive in the final third, in the box, taking his chances. And also I think when I was looking at through balls, he's got 1.23 per 90 this season across all competitions. So when you're looking at Jeremy Doku playing 25 to 30 games a season, he's going to be putting up just as many through balls, and that speaks a lot to the role that he is playing more inside to open up those passes into the penalty box for the players in front of him. So yeah, I think Jeremy Doku, Nico O'Reilly, Donnarumma I mentioned earlier in this video, Erling Haaland, and then also Phil Foden, who looks to be not only back to his kind of best form, but to be a more influential player within the team compared to what he was in that 23-24 season. Reminds me a lot of David Silva in the way he'd kind of knit everything together across the pitch from the build-up, progressing the ball in the final third, the way he kind of nips at players to recover the ball, being more creative, linking up with Erling Haaland. I think that kind of all-round game from Phil Foden has just gone up a level this season compared to what he was even with the 23-24 season, although he's very decisive in that with the goals and assists in the final third. I think this is the kind of all-around player that we wanted to see more of Phil Foden playing in midfield, and hopefully that continues like Doku, like Haaland. I think this is kind of the level that you'll see from these players for the rest of the season. So yeah, really encouraging to see. And then finally, just to look ahead to some of the games, you've got Everton at home, big match coming back off the international break. Erling Haaland not going to the friendly that Norway are playing against New Zealand. Good to see that he'll be fresh for that match. Lots of players like Phil Foden that just haven't gone out and played for the national team, so they would have had the time to rest, to recover, to be ready. You then look at looking around the league, Villarreal, Champions League away, be very tough. Dortmund at home in the Champions League. Again, like what we saw against Monaco, these teams will be tough to play against. You can play very well like they did against Monaco for most of that match, and then you can still end up dropping points. So you have to take those ones seriously. Swansea will be a great game to play more of the younger players, to rotate them, to keep things fresh before we then play that home match against Bournemouth. And then, yeah, you look at Bournemouth at home, you look at Liverpool at home. Despite them being at the Etihad, those will be tough games. These are two teams that will likely be within the top 4, top 5 of the Premier League at the time we play them. So it definitely doesn't get any easier when we get back from the international break. I think the main thing is to kind of build that momentum and keep that winning run going. So that's why you take every game. You take every game like as it comes. You focus on the nearest game, the next game coming up. So all the eggs will be in the Everton basket. You need to win that game to then give you the momentum to go to Villarreal, play them, beat them in the Champions League. If you beat them there, that gives you lots of confidence going into the game against Aston Villa, where City lost last season 2-1. You will want to put that right and at the very least pick up points there. And then, yeah, you've got those home games there that really you need to be winning as well. And I think by the time we get to the end of this run, so this is the last game before the November international break, this is when I think teams, media, etc. will start to realise City are in a title race. If they perform in these games, if what I'm seeing continues, the improvements are made, and they continue to pick up wins, then that's where I see that people will start to recognise that the City could be in a title race this season. But yeah, definitely doesn't get any easier. Very important games. You think about if you come away with these 2 wins in the Champions League, then you're going to feel great about your chances to make the top 8 for the Champions League and avoid those additional games next year. That kind of qualifying round, you don't want to be involved in that. And Aston Villa away is not going to be an easy game to play against for anybody in this league. To go away against some of these top teams, it's going to be very tough to win at those away grounds this season. So yeah, looking forward to it. be interesting. These are kind of my kind of general thoughts. Nothing too organised, just different things around the team where they need to improve, players that have stood out, that impressed me, and so on. Please let me know down below if there's things that I've missed out that I should have mentioned. Jump in the comments, we can have that discussion. Please make sure you like the video to help support the channel, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on the next video, and we'll be back with plenty more content this week.